It's great to participate from my house. So
Absolutely.
yes, the talk basically the main problem I want to address is many students, many people, many teenagers find reading as a skill, they find it difficult. So this talk will talk about how to motivate them, working on specific strategies, talking about some sub skills, and also preparing them for exams like selectividad or an English level exam, but also hopefully developing skills they will use beyond the classroom, and that's why it's reading for life. So I have broken the talk, divided the talk into four parts. The first part will be creating interest. So a number of things to think about before you do the reading, from choosing the text to pre-reading activities. Then we'll look at some strategies for helping students read. Thirdly, we'll be focusing on exam preparation, the different questions, the different skills students need to be successful. And finally, consolidating and extending, which is activities you could do after you've read the article or text to make it more memorable, how you can take advantage of what you've read. So looking at creating interest, as I said, many people find reading difficult, challenging. So how do we overcome this emotional or psychological barrier? And one of the ways is to use a variety of text types. So both in the text itself and in the content of the text. For example, an article, a review, an extract from a novel, fiction, nonfiction, biography. Those are the different genres, the different text types, but also the content of the text. And of course, you want to appeal to your audience. So the more teen friendly, the better. If it's an article, make it about a celebrity or a famous person that your students would know of and want to know more about. If it's a review, it could be a review of a video game that they're interested in. If it's a novel, you could have a teen protagonist, or it could be a famous character that they've heard about, like Sherlock Holmes, or someone they want to know more about. Teens also like having a choice. So if possible, you could have two articles or three articles, the students, according to which article they find the most interesting, and then they could share what they've read with their classmates. The important thing is that there's variety and that the content itself is engaging and relevant. No one wants to read something that they find off-putting or boring, or they're asking themselves, ugh, I don't care about this. So we're going to go to our first have your say, and my question to you is, why do students find reading difficult?
Okay, so we'll give you about 10 seconds again, 10 or 15 seconds to write in your answers to this question. Why do
Louise,
students
what do you
find
think?
reading
Why is reading
difficult?
difficult for
Why do
not
I?
that you have any trouble with reading, but why can you imagine it would
No,
be
but
difficult?
well, if I think back to the classes I've given, yes, students, well, I think often it's because, if we don't do some kind of preparation beforehand, get them engaged in the topic,
Mm, yeah,
find out what they already know. Somebody is saying that they lack vocabulary.
yeah,
Some people just don't even read in their own language, so it's difficult to get them motivated.
yeah.
Um, they get bogged down in, not understanding certain words, so they don't, they stop trying. So I think all of these reasons are absolutely reasons why students would find reading
Yeah.
difficult.
Personally, I wrote down some of the same ideas. I thought about attention span. It seems like nowadays we
Hmm.
are less likely to do personally any activity. You know,
Yeah,
I watch TV after a half an hour, I'm bored. I read an article, 20 minutes, I'm bored. And I'm a, you know, well-read.
yeah,
I consider myself cultured
yeah,
and I find my attention span when I see a long article, it's daunting. It's overwhelming.
yes,
Just
yes.
not
And
only,
we
sorry,
have so
yeah.
much input. We have so much input from different places. So it's difficult for us, I think, to concentrate on one particular thing and process it. And that's a
Yeah.
skill which needs developing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
not even talking about in a foreign language, but in your, when I read in English, just having it's the comprehension, but also the attention span and the willingness to devote the time that you need. So we're going to look at
absolutely.
some of these ideas. So before you read, I mentioned finding articles that are relevant and engaging. There's a question about authentic material, and here we have some pros and cons. So finding an article, a news article, or some fascinating, interesting internet article, the problem is the level. If it's too daunting, most articles potentially are for a native English level, C2 level. And so if your students are not able to understand, they may get frustrated, they may not want to read it. So it's better to have authentic material that has been chosen for an appropriate level, obviously through a course book, has geared the level to what we imagine the student's level is, and then you can always Google articles or do find articles from the internet after, as if to say, okay, look for more information, and then you can find articles on the internet. But in general, I would say course book articles are better. Another way to create interest before you read the article, as Louise mentioned, you want to get them engaged. You want to get them already thinking about what do they already know, what they can be predicting. So here, this activity is you bring in objects or use photos or pictures, and you ask the students, what do they predict? What do they anticipate the article is about? So think I have a fairly obvious obvious question here. We have a magnifying glass, a pipe, a very particular specific hat to this character, and a violin. Louise, what's the article about?
Let me see. Let me see. Ooh, I think it's Sherlock Holmes, isn't it? It must be the hat and the pipe. It's typical.
Yes,
Plus, I saw the
perfect.
article before, but
Yes,
mhm.
yes. So it's just a way of getting their interest and not just, we're going to read an article, but what do you think it's about? Using some deductive skills. If you don't want to bring in objects, there are other tips, other ways you can get your audience, your students interested. You could play music. So in this case, you could have the students close their eyes or imagine the setting for a particular piece of music. In this case, you could use the theme music from the BBC Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes, or there's the Robert Downey Jr. movies, which I imagine some of your Bachillerato students may have seen. If the article, not about Sherlock Holmes, but if the article were about food, you could bring in some food, have them do a little healthy taste test. You could also bring in theater. Louise mentioned I like to teach theater, so if the article is about a celebrity, you can just do 1 minute, 2 minutes of charades. Charades is where you're acting out a character, some mime, and of course, one of the characters could be Sherlock Holmes, because that's the article we're reading. Another idea is, I guess it's not speed dating, but speed talking. So the teacher asks a question and a student will talk to a partner for 30 seconds. The teacher says, change, and they talk to a different partner for 30 seconds on that same topic. We're trying to draw on knowledge they may already have, generating interest, which will make reading the article easier. One more idea I had was the teacher could make some very controversial statement that might shock students into paying attention. For example, all celebrities are fakes. And they're all like, what? And then they have to defend or reject that statement and do a bit of a debate. Again, getting them talking, getting them thinking before you read the article. So those are just some pre-reading activities. Once you have the article itself, before you jump, sorry, the text itself, before you jump in with paragraph 1, there are other clues, other things you can use. The title. So in this, it's a little small, but it says mind reading technology. So you could ask your students, what do you think the text is about from the title? There's also a picture. So you could say, what do you think the device on the woman's head does? Okay, so they're using the title, the heading, the photo, and you can also ask a general question. Did you know that there are machines that can read your mind? Okay. And then engaging them, getting them thinking about the article before they read it. If you're using prospects, there's also a number of videos, a video introduction that we're going to look at now. So this is a video, and while we're watching the video, I want you to, it's a short video. What connection does the boy make between environmental issues and space exploration? All right, let's watch the video.
Hi, welcome back to my vlog. I was reading an article the other day about the environment and the huge investments we need to make, basically to stop or slow down the amount of pollution we're creating. I mean, we're destroying the planet, aren't we? And then there was a link to another article about how space exploration companies are investing in technology to send humans to other planets, to establish colonies. I thought, why not use all that money and knowledge to fix up the planet we live on instead? What do you think? Explore the universe or fix things here on Earth?
Okay, so Louise, what would you say the main idea behind this blog, this video blog was? What is he saying about the environment and space?
Well, he thinks that we should actually use technology, develop technology in order to make our planet more habitable rather than using technology that they're doing now to send people to live on other planets. So it's
Exactly.
actually a very inspiring thought, I think. And he sort of addresses the audience and says, well, what do you think about this? How about this
Yes.
idea?
Yes, it's linking to ideas, and I imagine that the article that follows will talk about space exploration, will talk about the environment. It's a way of, a different way of engaging the students and getting them to think about the topic before they jump in and start reading. So we've talked about creating interest. We answered the question. And we're going to go to the second part, which is helping students read. We're going to look at some strategies and skills, but before I dive in with my ideas, I would like to know what you are currently doing in your classes. So the question is, this is another have your say, what strategies and subskills do you use or work on to help your students read? I have an example, shared reading, or predicting meaning from context. So please let us know what you're currently using.
Okay, so again, yeah, we'll give you about 10 or 15 seconds to do that. What are the skills and strategies, or the strategies and sub-skills that you use or work on to help your students read? And while we're waiting for people to write in just short answers, there's no need to write long answers. I'm just thinking back to my classes. Can I say something, Sky?
Sure.
Or should I wait? Actually, rather than me saying something, people are writing in, and I think I should relay their answers.
Perfect.
People are saying share the reading in class together and discussing the plot. Check keywords, skimming,
Yeah.
scanning. That was important, I think. Highlighting
Mm.
keywords, analyzing, as we said, the images of the text, the titles, the headlines, as we said before. Um, Try to find interesting tests and topics, debate before the reading. So all of these I think are absolutely valid. Changing the ending, making it funny, sad, shocking, or giving them the beginning, maybe the first line of the reading and getting them to predict. So great,
Great.
great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a variety of skills and strategies, both pre-reading, during, and post-reading, which we're gonna look at. So while students are reading, I first want to look at these two teaching strategies. The first I call divide and conquer, and the second I call share the load. Divide and conquer means when students are looking at this article, for example, it feels long, it feels challenging, it feels too long, so attack it paragraph by paragraph. You just start with paragraph, I think it's A, yeah, A, paragraph A, and
Yes.
talk about comprehension. What was the main idea? Answer any vocabulary questions. Then once everyone's understood paragraph A, go on to paragraph B. So breaking a longer text into smaller, more manageable chunks helps build confidence. The second strategy is share the load. So again, this is an example from prospects. We have the title, Marathon Woman. We have the accompanying photo. So you would do some of those pre-reading activities. What do you think the article is about? What is happening in this photo? This man is chasing this woman. And then you can divide the class into groups, do a bit of collaborative learning, and say, imagine there are four students in each group, and person one, you're responsible for paragraph one. Person two, you're responsible for paragraph two, etc., etc. You're dividing the text into the same number of parts as there are students. It also helps to give them a task. The task, perhaps just saying, read it isn't enough. You could have them find something that surprised you, or what was the most interesting part of your section. Giving them a task helps them focus. And once they have shared the load, then they have to summarize. So part of this collaborative learning is the sub-skill of being able to summarize and paraphrase and put the text into your own words. So this is a skill that they should be able to develop not only for test taking purposes, but just for general reading comprehension. And they can also do this out loud and work together and teach each other. So sub-skills, summarizing, we just looked at. Two more sub-skills I want to look at, and one of these someone mentioned, guessing meaning from context, and then skimming and scanning. So guessing meaning from context, most good course books, they have some of the key words, new vocabulary highlighted in the text. And it's very often that there is a task in the course book which says match the words in blue with the definition. But unfortunately, in this case, it doesn't exactly specify some of the tips. How does a student discover the meaning of words they don't know? So here are my suggestions. Context of the sentence. Tell your students to look at the words in the same sentence for clues. So the first word in blue on this text is quite small, but the word is villain, and next to it is the word evil. So evil, villain. The word evil gives you a sense of what villain is. Later in the sentence, they mention the word hero. So there's a contrast. Hero is one thing. Villain must be the opposite. So certainly using the words around the word. Another trick is within the word itself, trying to identify what part of speech it is. Are there clues in the suffix or prefix? Is there a Latin root? Does the word remind you of another word you already know? Words that begin with re, means do it again, trying to identify some of these skills. And finally, telling them that it's perfectly fine if you don't understand every word. Many people read articles and they don't have to know the definition of every word. You can get the general meaning without being frustrated or feeling discouraged if you don't know the meaning of every word. We're trying to overcome that psychological trauma of, oh, I don't know what this means, I'm terrible. Okay? So 2 more subskills, skimming and scanning. Skimming is when you're reading a text quite quickly to get the main information, and scanning also means reading the text quickly, but you're searching for specific information. Again, this is often used in a test situation, but these skills are also useful for life. Telling your students that you don't read every text in the same way. You don't read a novel in the same way that you read the movie showtimes, the cinema listings. That's a scanning. You're scanning, where's the movie I want to see, what day. It's a different skill. So of course it helps you with test preparation, but it's also skills that you will use in different times in your life with different types of texts. And again, in their language 1 or in language 2 or in English. So now let's look a bit more into exam preparation. Okay, how reading is a fundamental part of many exams, and how can we prepare our students. I have a poll, and I do not know what you're going to say. I'm very curious. In your experience, which exam question, which type of exam question do your students find most challenging? A, true-false questions. B, multiple choice questions. C, insert the missing heading or missing sentences. Or D, identify the paragraph. So that's when the text or the examiner says, where did you find this information? So it's a poll, and please choose
Yeah.
your choice.
Okay, so people are fast and furiously answering this. We've got a majority. Seems like a majority. It's around 75 up to, it's kind of going up and down between 75 and 80% are saying C, insert missing headings sentences is the most challenging.
Okay.
It's going down a bit, but it's still a majority. And then followed by multiple choice. It's around the 25% mark. And we've got then, it's neck and neck at the moment, true or false, and identifying the paragraph. So a
Okay.
majority are saying C, next comes B, and true and false, A and D, identify the paragraph, are similar.
Well,
Okay, thank
luckily
you everyone.
I've prepared for all possibilities. Here we go.
Great.
True, false. So true, false statements, one of the best things you can do is you can exploit true, false questions at any time in your class, not just with reading, but it could also be a pre-reading activity. Remember I mentioned the teacher making a controversial statement. You could also make that statement a true, false statement. Getting them to practice the true, false type of question in other ways, not just with reading. Also with true false questions, it's important to have them justify why they think the sentence is true or false. And this does not have to be always written. It can be an oral activity. This way, students are having to put their opinions into their explanations into words, and the teacher can see where their strengths and weaknesses lie, with maybe they're getting tricked by some of these false friends or synonyms, things like that. Multiple choice questions. Here's a question for you. When answering multiple choice questions, you should A, try to anticipate the answer as you read the first part of the question. B, read all the answers carefully before deciding. C, discard any answers you think are clearly wrong. Or D, underline the part of the question that contains the key to the answer. Louise, what do you think?
Let me see. I'm just going to quickly scan them. Read all the answers. Do you know what? I actually think that you should do all of them.
Dun
All of them.
dun!
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Trick
That makes
question.
sense.
The answer is all of them.
Okay.
Four, four different tips to help your students with multiple choice questions. I want to focus first on C and D. So discarding any answers you think are clearly wrong. You can tell your students they need to think like the person who made the exam, the examiner, not the examiner, the person who wrote the exam. Why did that person choose this word or that word? There are lots of tricks, and if they can think like the exam creator, then they can say, ah, I know what this person is doing. This is not the right answer. They're trying to trick me. Cross it out. And D, underline the part of the question that contains the key to the answer. I know in my experience, when I was taking selectividad exams, the American version, the SAT, if you go too quickly, your eyes can skip a key word like except or unless or but, okay? You sometimes are you think the question is asking you one thing, but really the question is asking you a different thing or even the opposite. So that's why I think reading the question and underlining the key part, what are they really asking you, helps focus your brain so you're answering the right question. Along with part A, anticipate the answer as you read the first part of the question. I actually was going to mention this with the true-false questions. I forgot. Some teachers use the strategy, read the questions first, then read the article. And some people go for read the article first and then read the questions. Honestly, you can make a case for either. I think both strategies have their pros and cons. Personally, I'm a fan of skim the questions first, then read the article. But it's down to personal preference. Next type. This is was the most popular challenge for students. Inserting the sentence or inserting the heading in the correct place. The skill we're really working on here is reference words, that students need to be able to identify the personal pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, the substitution words like such or these or they. It's really important that students know what these words are referring to. Other words like however or therefore or then also give clues as to where these sentences fit. So I think just drawing attention to the key markers, which are reference words, or these however, but, then, therefore, those kind of words is the key. Another strategy, a tip, which you can tell your students is they don't have to do it in the order that it comes. It's better to do the easy ones first. If there are 5 of them, and they know this one clearly goes here, we'll do that one first, and then it's sort of a process of elimination. As you're doing the easy ones, you're reducing the number of options for the harder ones. Find the paragraph. I think this goes back to the shared reading activity I suggested earlier, where students are in groups. Each student is responsible for a particular section of the text. And then when they compare and report to each other, it can become easier to remember who mentioned that part of the paragraph. Where was the author's idea about this? Who remembers reading that? Oh, I think that was mine. Let's all go look at that paragraph. Okay, so a couple more tips for exam preparation. Don't just ask questions, do activities. What I mean by this is have your students create questions themselves. Get them to think like the exam makers. Have them make their own true false statements or multiple choice questions. The idea, you can even make it a competition. Teenagers love competition. I love competition. Prizes that if people fall for your false friends, or if you're able to trick people, you get extra points and the winner gets to choose the blah, blah, blah we do tomorrow, some kind of prize. But I think a way for them to understand how tests work is for them to make the questions for each other. Things like synonyms, false friends. This word works as a vocabulary word, but it can't be used with this grammar, trying to get them to think why the answers could be distractors or tricks. Another idea is time management. This is a skill useful for your whole life, certainly when you're taking an exam. This is very difficult for students to practice outside of the classroom. They need the teacher to mark, to define a specific amount of time, whether it doesn't have to be an exam situation, but you could even do a vocabulary, match the word to the definition, and you only have 3 minutes. But any activity that gives them a little time pressure is training them, is preparing them for the very real time pressure they feel on an exam. So I think don't forget that time management is another skill they have to practice. Don't just write it, say it. Not every exam prep technique needs to be a written, circle the answer, or do writing. You can also have them present information orally. Lots of exams ask, what was the author's main idea? Or how did the author feel about this? Describe the author's opinion, the author's tone. All of these answers could be given orally. Again, you could do a think, pair, share. They could think about it, talk to their neighbor, and then talk to the rest of the class. But it's a good oral activity. It's getting them to practice speaking, and it's working on a text in a different way. Okay, the final part of my talk is consolidate and extend. So we've done some pre-reading activities. We've talked about some strategies. Now, what can you do after the students have read? And I want to know what you're already doing. See if your ideas are similar to mine. What activities do you do after students have read the text? It's a have your say.
Okay, so again, as ever, we'll give you about 10 or 15 seconds to write in examples of activities, just keywords for, yes, the activities that you do after students have read the text. Can I say something, Sky?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, well, the activities I've done with students after reading the text. For example, I've done actually, if it's a story, for example, or a fiction, imagine a different ending to it. I've often done speaking activites, follow-on speaking activities, debates, as you mentioned before.
Yep.
And like some of the people here who writing, get them to do a project. A presentation is always very effective. Have a class discussion.
Yep.
Do further vocabulary work. And let me just go down and see some of the other. What's the text about? What did you understand? Brainstorming activity. Write their opinion and some topic about the topic of the text. So yeah, I think I certainly recognize a lot of activities that I've done in class
Me
from
too.
the ideas that people have sent in. So thank you.
Yes. My first idea is get their opinions, which more than one
Yeah,
person wrote as an idea. We want to get them to express their own ideas, again, in a written way, or as many people mentioned, in an oral presentation. It helps make the text memorable and they're relating it to their own lives. A couple quick ideas: you could have them film, everyone has a mobile phone, they could film themselves doing a 60-second review of the text, an oral review, just on their phone, I guess with their friend's phone, recording each other. Or to make it a bit more 21st century, I had an idea that they have to write a Twitter war, like a Twitter conversation with 140 or 280 characters of fictional people arguing back and forth about the article. Other ideas I have, of course, asking students to do further research. I believe someone mentioned a research
yeah,
component. So look online and come up with what else is out there. We read this article, what else can you find? If it is fictional piece, like someone said, change the ending, do some creative writing. They could do a survey where they come up with a couple questions and have to ask people in the next week, family or classmates, and then come back with the results. As Louise mentioned, I do a lot of theater, so you can adapt a text to a performance. Not even, it doesn't have to be a fictional text. You can also do improvisations based on non-fiction texts. Interview the author. So imagine you're going to ask the author some questions. What would you ask? I like this one. Defend the opposite viewpoint. It's a great critical thinking skill. Imagine you agree with what the author says, but what would the opposite viewpoint be? How would you defend that? And then again, rewrite the ending, interview a character, interview the subject. And this could be, with written questions or an improvisation that you're acting out. So just a brief summary. Today we looked at creating interest, how to motivate students before you read the article, using a variety of texts, topics that are teen friendly. We looked at helping students read, some of the strategies like skimming and scanning, and using words around the word. We looked at exploiting reading for exam preparation, the different types of questions, having students come up with the questions, having them think like the exam creators. And lastly, today we looked at activities to do to consolidate and extend. What can you do after you've read the article? Thank you so much for your attention. The last part is, if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them. So please send in any questions.